Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Wrestler from 2008. So, this, of course, is to mostly focus on wrestling from an independent circuit. Of course, we have a wrestler called Randy the Ram Robinson that, of course, have highly regarded onto the independent scene, and I guess possibly had gone on um, to seem to work with a much more, but not really quite sure. They kind of leave it very vague. It is kind of interesting that at the end of this movie, you do have Randy the Ram Robinson and of course, the Ayatollah in a Ring of Honor ring, which sadly enough, like Ring of Honor, does not exactly exist anymore because it had either folded or at some point may eventually see another light of day. But right now, currently, the only thing that is to be Ring of Honor is sadly nothing but the people that were to wrestle there. So going into this film, I really do enjoy this story. We have a character that has gone through possibly a number of different injuries and a number of different problems, probably over the time of him going on and doing professional wrestling. Of course, through some interviews, wrestlers would go on and say it because I don't want to seem like I'm like I just have watched a number of different interviews from a number of different people that have kind of talked about this, and so a lot of people would go on and say you can only take a certain number of bumps. And so possibly for this character who is to go on and still in a independent ring, going on and still like bleeding and all kinds of things for his sport, realizing that he's probably not going to get the money that he was to have said he was going to get. Hence why we have kind of Randy who's kind of like, hey, this money's a little light. And he's like, well, hey, man, like, sorry, the ticket sales weren't as good. So we go on and we have Randy who's really hustling, wrestling on the weekends to turn around and do these really hardcore matches so that way he can go on and try to get these bigger payouts, because there's a pay scale difference between a normal match and a hardcore match. And of course, in certain industries and certain places, there's like death matches which are even wild and crazy. More kind of famously known, there is the David Arquette, Nick Gage uh, death match, which of course is kind of an interesting story. So we go on and have Randy, who is to be wrestling on the weekends, but during the week he is to go on and I guess be a backroom worker for a grocery store, which like I don't know what exactly he's doing in this back room here because again, a lot of this movie is to be very vague, but because I would say he's a backroom stock person, but I've never seen him go out and actually stock a shelf, or I've like the only thing that you kind of see him do is he's just in the back room somewhere, usually talking to his superior, who is Wayne, who at some points is a joke or belittle him at some points in this film. We have it where Randy is to eventually starting to slow down forcibly wrestling, and now he is to try and go on and work at this grocery store more, and it goes on to slowly but surely make it to where Randy just starts to become more and more miserable. Because, of course, we have Randy who is to just, like, he has all this anger, he has all this aggression that he needs to get out, and he had wrestling as an outlet for that. So, So we go on and we have a character called Randy, and like I just really like the way that this is to like overall just be a very different kind of wrestling film. Of course, it's to be a much more film for adults, so that's great. Especially with Cassidy, who of course is Marissa Tomei's character, who is to be this dancer at this club, and Randy is to have a soft spot for Cassidy, and it seems that more and more we have Cassidy, who's uh, sadly enough being, I don't like to say this, but like the movie basically says this. It seems that Cassidy's being aged out, which is an awful thing to say. Um, but it just seems that more and more, it seems that Cassidy's losing interest in her job, or losing interest in trying to get money to consistently try to do her job, which is sad. And Randy is going on and, for health reasons, having problems doing his job, which he loves, which is wrestling. So, with that said, let's just go into the double five time territory. Um, I have a lot of fun with this movie. I wish that we would go on and have like more shows that kind of focus, or more movies, or more shows that do kind of focus on wrestling, um, but maybe not as like vicious as this. Like I'm like like we have like a real crazy like hardcore match going on here, and I'm just like, wow, this is insane. Um, Luckily, there wasn't like light tubes and all these things kind of used where I've seen in other kind of hardcore matches where I'm like, oh my god. But it gets pretty bad. It gets pretty up there. Um, but yeah, so with that said, let's go into that double five time territory. Let's just go into spoilers about this one. Yeah, just I enjoy it because it's a wrestling movie. I wish there was more wrestling movies out there. I know, of course, there is a Star Show, or the Star Show, uh, a show called Heels that's on Stars that does have, of course, wrestling focused, like show. So I enjoy that. I like that. Hopefully, we'll be able to get a second season out of that, possibly. Not quite sure, but we'll see if that happens somewhere down the road. Uh, but yeah, so with that said, let's just go into that double five time territory. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. So we have the very beginning of this. We have like this build up of kind of announcers going on and talking about Randy, kind of building him up as this character that is to have been like kind of all over the world, kind of this big name kind of character, and that a number of people had gone on and announced what this guy has done, which is to possibly mean that he might have gotten into some kind of much more substantial wrestling kind of thing. If there's to be announcers involved, because that might be TV, that might be like some kind of because if there's announcers involved, there has to be some kind of like TV deal or some kind of something being done. It'd be weird to just have like announcers. Like that's why you don't really see throughout most of this movie, you don't see an announcer table through most of this. Nobody's really calling the matches. It's really just you're hearing what's going on in the ring, because we kind of have that kind of lower rung of wrestling going on here because it's independence. I don't want to discredit independence and like, oh, they're the lowest rung of, no. Um, like it's just a smaller scale of things is really what I want to say compared to like a WWE or AEW kind of thing. Um, but with that said, like these guys are to do really well what they do. So we go on in the very beginning of this, have Randy, who is wrestling a guy named, I believe his name is Johnny Rotten, or Tommy Rotten. And I only know this because we really don't even have the picture of this character, we just have the name. And so Randy is to go on and wrestle with Tommy Rotten, and we of course have Randy, who's kind of before the show, kind of talking to Tommy and like saying like, okay, what do you want to do? We of course have Tommy, who's like, well, I normally do a low blow, and Randy's like, okay, cheap heat, that sounds great. Uh, Cheap heat meaning the audience will kind of like, I hate that you did that, yeah. And so it's kind of interesting we have like these matches being put together like in backstages. If you go on, you watch uh, the show Heels, or you go on, you start to realize that you start to notice the man behind the curtain, as they like to say. For if anybody's to know Wizard of Oz, you're gonna go and find out like these things are planned ahead of time. If a lot of people are like, oh well, hey, like there's a lot of times where wrestlers are so good that they can plan it into the ring, or they've kind of wrestled so many times that they don't actually need to talk. Sometimes it's just like CM Punk will go on and tell you that he could wrestle a match with Rey Mysterio and never say one word to him through that entire match, and like it'll be easy because they just know what both of them are to, of course, need or want or do or whatever. So we go on and we have Randy, who's wrestling or Tommy Rotten. I want to say Johnny Rotten here, and we have all these guys in the back that are going on, and they're kind of mentioning like what they're working, certain body parts and stuff like that. And I find that to be really interesting when we have certain characters that are kind of submissioning certain kind of body parts, or kind of what would be the perfect word here? They're kind of they're targeting a certain body part. They're targeting a certain place. Maybe not to like submit somebody at the end of the match, but maybe it's just to kind of build the fact that this person has to come back and like and get their comeback and start to go on and take down their opponent, uh, and have that seemingly one thing be the one thing that like, hey, like we'll build to this one thing about the leg, and then all of a sudden like the leg will be the best leg, and whatever. And so yeah, so we go on, and so we have Randy, who's wrestling Tommy, and so we go out there, and basically everything that they're saying in the early part of this movie they go on and do. Tommy, of course, to give the low blow. Everybody's like, boo, I hate Tommy, even though like he's a really cool guy. We have like we have Mickey Rourke in this movie, who goes on and is like, he's like trying to like be nice to everybody. He's going on and like telling them like, hey man, like I know there's a lot of politics in here, but hey, things are gonna work out for you. Things are things are gonna go well. Like we just have Mickey Rourke that goes on and tries to like boost everybody up to just kind of make them feel good, especially if they have like really small roles in this movie. Like Mickey is to try to go through and try to um, kind of like make people like seem important. And so that's kind of the interesting thing about this story, is we kind of have like small characters who he's trying to just like have a past relationship with, or to go on and just like try to build like the backstory technically of his character, or just kind of go on and kind of help out these people to give them kind of a little bit more screen time, or to make them look good in some way or another. So Randy the Ram Robinson, it seems like his name is actually to be legitimately Robin, but he goes by Randy. So we have Randy that goes on and is to deliver, um, like, of course, the ram, where we have this kind of, like, it looks very much like an axe handle from coming off the top rope, but like the axe handle would have to be like you're locking both hands together, whereas this is kind of like an elbow maneuver. Like, it looks like a splash slash like there is like so much about it where it's like, okay, what is this move exactly? um because it doesn't seem like an elbow drop, but it might be more like a body splash kind of maneuver. It just looks weird when like, I guess that's why you never actually showcase this move actually landing. You just kind of see him up in the air, kind of going like this and doing this, like this move that we kind of see here. We never actually see him landing because it would look more like a body splash thing than there being elbows being dropped here. So I guess that this top rope move is to, I guess, be Randy's like finisher. And you would have thought that like Randy would have came up with some other kinds of moves than just this one, because when really looking at it, there's several times where like a lot of top ropes aren't built the best. And so like there was sometimes where I would honestly see certain rings where like their ropes just aren't set up that well, and to have a guy going and climbing up to the top just doesn't quite seem like he's gonna land, or it seems like he's gonna fall on his rumpus room or his backside. And I'm just like, okay, like doing that move consistently for an independent thing, um, like I don't know about that. Um, but it is what it is. Maybe they can kind of come up with a way of figuring out how that move can still be effective if the ropes aren't all that well. They can have like a no count or no falls count anywhere, and they can kind of do any kind of interesting change of things or some points. But anyways, what am I talking about? So we go on and we have Randy and we have Tommy. Of course, Randy, of course, is to win. We of course have this wrestling promoter who is Nick Volt or Volp, who's going on and talking about that Randy is to possibly go and fight the Ayatollah, who is actually Ernest Miller. I remember him in WCW. I think he used to be called Ernest the Cat Miller. He used to be wearing these certain kind of shoes that would have like these like certain kind of tricks in them, to where he would like kick people a lot. And we'd go and find out like, oh, the shoes are loaded with something. Oh, the shoes have like some kind of mysterious thing towards knocking people out. Underhanded that guy. Um, but like, yeah, it was a real fun wrestler. I really enjoyed his stuff when he was in WCW. So we go on and we have Nick Volp, who's going on and telling Randy that the 20-year anniversary of Randy and the Ayatollah is coming up soon. And Randy's like, oh, okay, well, that's great. What does that mean? Like, because Randy doesn't even know that this is to be a 20-year thing, because I'm sure for him, like, his life is a blur. So we go on, we have Nick who's telling Randy, it's like, well, hey, like, I'm gonna go on and we're gonna do like a Ring of Honor kind of certain matchup for this, and kind of get that rematch going, to kind of remind people about this whole anniversary. And Randy's like, great, book it, sure. So we now go on and we have Randy, who is to make it back to his trailer, to find out that his trailer is to be locked up. And so now Randy, whose back is out because I've kind of had certain issues where I've had like vitamin D deficiency, where like my back just kind of every once in a while is just like not as good as it should. Um, and so I get that kind of those aches and those kind of pains at some points. And so we go on and we have Randy, who is to now be telling uh, this manager that's at this trailer, like he's kind of banging on the door and he's like, "Hey man, let me into my home. At least give me like something. Like I just like my back went out." So Randy goes on, and he, of course, is to not be able to talk to this guy. And so when he does meet him the very next day, he's like, "Hey man, like you have to give me the money for me to give you this trailer." So we go on. We have Randy, who is, of course, sleeping in his van. And when he wakes up, there's a bunch of kids that are all like, "Yeah, get the wrestler, get the guy, and beat him up." And so he's kind of like pushing all of them aside. He's kind of like, he's elbowing them, forearming them. Like, of course, like pretend and whatever, he's not really hurting them because, like, we're not going to that at that level. It's all pretend and it's all play. So Randy goes on and is to, of course, try to, when he goes to this grocery store, he's asking, of course, his supervisor, Wayne, like, "Hey man, can I just get some extra shifts? Can I get anything that, of course, is to be during the week because I work during the weekends, like, or I have plans during the weekend," which, of course, for Randy, that means wrestling. So of course, Wayne is to mention the only thing that's available at some point is to be working the deli, which is to mean like cut meats and stuff like that. That's all that Wayne has available. And so now Randy is just kind of forced to work this deli and is consistently having to go on and on and on and try to get all these like different meats and talk to all these people. It kind of gets to the point where Randy is starting to eventually just like, "Hey, good looking," like, and like this person is like, it just seems like Randy is just randomly calling all these people, all these kind of like, "Hey, sugar," like, "Hey, darling," like, "Hey, all these things," and and we have it to where like maybe these like names don't exactly fit the bill, but like we just have Randy just calling these people out, and they're just like, "Huh?" And they're like, "Oh, okay, well, I'll get my order out." So we go on. We have Randy, who eventually is to go on and have this one woman that wants a couple things of chicken, and so Randy's going on of like, "Oh, like what do you want?" She's like, "Well, I want two kinds of chicken." He's like, "Oh, I want that same kind of chicken too, and a brain." Let's just say, let's be creative here. So Randy goes on and is to also go to this club with Cassidy. And immediately we have Cassidy, who is trying desperately to try and get dances from men besides Randy. And it seems like nothing is working out. It seems that every single guy is to want to go on and get some other girl, like some girl with this nose ring or some girl with this other kind of thing about her, maybe a younger one, maybe a different one, so on and so forth. And Cassidy's just like, really? Like, so when Randy is to make it into this club after talk to the bouncer, and the bouncer evidently is to ask Randy about certain kind of medication, let's just say, some Vicodins or some kind of something for his back. So Randy goes on into this club to eventually see that Cassidy is being humiliated by these men, and Randy's like, "Well, hey, like this is a good quality woman, and you're like not wanting to like have her dance for you, like come on." So all of a sudden Randy starts getting into fights with these guys, and eventually they go on to eventually just kind of leave this girl alone. And so Randy eventually goes on and has a lap dance with Cassidy, you would probably think with how well known Randy is, you would probably think that he would just be a bouncer at this bar, at this place, but maybe not because like really when looking at it, like you had like Dave Batista. He went on and he was like a bouncer at a bar for about a decade, and he was just like, man, like like it was just so easy for me to just go from bouncer to bouncer to bouncer, and I would just keep making this money, but like I really just wasn't feeling like fulfilled. And man, if I could just turn around and go on and have done something else. Um, so um, but anyways, so we have Randy, who is to, of course, get a dance from Cassidy, and it seems that eventually Randy is to want a little bit more from Cassidy, and it seems that Cassidy, things aren't really working out for her work. More and more, she's realizing that she's just not getting paid when she's going on and taking these shifts. And she starts to realize that it's like, well, hey, like, how about I go on and just kind of be with Randy, because like nobody else really wants me, or nobody really likes me enough to pay for me, but Randy always will. So we go on and we push on, and we have Randy, who is to again go in another independent wrestling promotion, and so he goes on, and of course he is to do this hardcore match, where of course there are staples involved, there's glass tables involved, there's barbed wire involved, very hardcore-ish like match. Um, so we go on, and we of course have Randy, who of course is to fight this guy who's called Necro Butcher, and so we of course have it to where this guy who's to be the butcher is very nice to Randy, going on and kind of telling him it's like, well, hey, like we can go on and do any number of these things. And we have the butcher who's asking Randy, it's like, well, how do you like to get stapled? And Randy's like, what? Like stapled? So we go on and we have Randy that's telling the butcher, it's like, well, hey, be a little bit light on those staples. Well, yeah, it's like, so we also have Randy that was going on with one of the other wrestlers and going through this store and just bashing the other wrestler with things, just smacking him and breaking him with stuff. And I'm just like, you do realize you probably should pay for that before you break it, right? But so we go on and have these wrestlers that's grabbing all this stuff throughout this store and just bashing one another with them. And like we have it where Randy's like very first match, we have him going like head first into this chair, and I'm like, wait a minute, like you definitely should not be doing that kind of anymore. Um, like we also had Randy in his first match with Tommy. He cuts himself so he can bleed, and then he goes on and eventually gets kind of stitched up. Cassidy's realized blood, and we of course have Randy who's like, "Oh yeah, my bad. Like I got cut while I was doing a match." So now we have a hardcore match where definitely there's a lot of blood being spilled here. So we go on and have both Randy and both Butcher that have kind of finished up this hardcore match, and they just look battered and beaten and have to go on and be like heavily sewn up and all kinds of things. And so all of a sudden we're seeing the carnage of these characters. We're seeing the uh, like the stapled like dollar bill or money of some sort that is to be stapled onto the butcher. And so we all of a sudden see now 14 minutes earlier, and so we actually get to see this hardcore match, how it all played out. So we go on, and we of course, because we had Randy who was talking about this table spot, and so Randy's talking to Butcher and is like, oh hey, like like, were you okay about that whole table thing? And we end up finding out why, crazily. So we have Randy and the Butcher, where this Butcher is going on and like stapling Randy, and we're getting these really hard hits coming from both its characters, using weapons and all kinds of crazy stuff. Having at some point where the Butcher is to fling Randy through this glass table, and we go on and have Randy, who's kind of pulling out this one barbed wire piece from his stomach. Man, like, barbed wire is definitely not something to f with, because it's just like, I can imagine somebody accidentally like cutting themselves really badly during a match, simply because of a barbed wire thing where they were trying to pull it out. But anyways, so we go on and have this carnage unfolding before our very eyes. And so there's to be this one spot where both the Butcher and Randy are to go up on this ladder. And so we have Randy, who kind of choke slams the Butcher into this table with, I think, a bunch of thumbtacks. And, well, it looks like thumbtacks to me. So, but it looks like the characters aren't like filled with thumbtacks. It just doesn't. I was like, what the is it? Is this barbed wire? Might have been barbed wire, because really you could tell the difference between barbed wire and thumbtacks or whatever, because like they would leave a mark after the match. But it is what it is. Anyways, so after the match, we go on. We have Randy, who is like, something is really wrong here. We also had Randy, who was going on and talking to this one wrestler beforehand and starting to get certain drugs, of course, that are to supposedly make him big and strong. And then we have this one medical wrestler that's kind of showing off his guns, and of course, like, this wrestler is to be shirtless. We have it after Randy was to kind of finish up this one wrestling promotion. We ended up seeing one wrestler who was physically having to change, while everybody's kind of dwindling things down. And because, yeah, like, these guys have to go on and just change anywhere, to the point of like, yeah, I don't want to change in front of all these people, but they're kind of forced into it, because that's wrestling. That's the way things are. You don't get a private locker room and whatever. So we go on, and we of course have it where we get Randy after this match, who is all of a sudden, from this hardcore match, going on and kind of getting all these things being stitched up upon his body, getting a number of these staples being pulled out, and these ones are kind of really tricky to get pulled out, and so on and so forth. So after this match, we see Randy start to barf, and then he falls over, to all of a sudden be awoken within the hospital, with Randy trying to pull off this breather piece, and all of a sudden, like, the doctors are kind of telling Randy, like, hey, like, relax, or we're gonna have to put you to sleep. So all of a sudden, Randy is to wake up, and then he is to be put to sleep, and then when he wakes up, we of course have this doctor going and telling Randy, yeah, like, all that stuff that you've kind of been putting through your system, like, you need to stop that, like, or you're going to die. So we go on and find out that Randy was to have a heart attack, which was to lead him to now needing to stop wrestling. Because we of course have Randy, who's telling this doctor, it's like, well, hey, like, I can get back to my workout regiment and everything like that. And we have the doctor is like, well, like, if it's a normal workout, then yeah, you can kind of work up to that. But after somebody is to have a heart attack, you've kind of seen other kind of movies or stories or something like that. There's one Jack Nicholson story or movie where he was to go on, and eventually once he was to be able to walk up and down a certain flight of stairs, that he was to be able to, of course, go on and be able to like sleep with his wife, do any number of kind of activities, and but he eventually had to like work up to walking up that flight of stairs to be able to um, get back to normal, so to speak. So kind of for Randy, he has to go on and eventually learn while kind of trying to jog through the forest, that he kind of goes and cowers down against this tree, and he just can't walk anymore, realizing that he has kind of overstepped what of course he should be stepping to. So we go on and we have Randy, who of course is to uh, realize that he should retire from wrestling, that he should go on and do certain autograph sessions where he goes and sees a number of wrestlers who have also retired from wrestling for one reason or another. And so we have a number of these wrestlers, which, of course, are to be these guys that have this merch table that go on and have all these like autographs being signed and all this yibbity yabbity yibbity yabbity. So we have Randy that's kind of watching all these other legends, all these other wrestlers, who are just kind of waiting for people to eventually get signed and autographed and merch and whatever. So we just go on and we have Randy, who is just kind of waiting things out, just going on and just like, well, yeah, like I just like hoping somebody's gonna come in here to just want an autograph of mine or take my picture or whatever. We have certain other guys that are just kind of they're at these tables and they're just sleeping because there's just like uh, a lot of guys that are probably just burnt out on the road and so on and so forth. And so like there's some people that probably realize that they're not going to get anybody coming, so they might as well just take a nap. That's one side of things where it's like eventually your popularity runs out, and Randy is starting to realize that. So we go on. We have Randy who is going on and doing this deli job, and we of course have it where Randy's going on and telling Cassidy about his heart attack. He's like, hey, could I just speak to you alone for a minute? Cassidy's like, well, no, I'm working. And Randy's like, hey, I had a heart attack. And Cassidy's like, okay, let me just go on and talk to you. And so Cassidy's going on and trying to be nice to Randy and just going on and saying like, well, how about like you should be with family right now. Go ahead and find anybody that's kind of left on the side of your family so you can just spend time with them because maybe you might die soon, sadly enough. Um, and it seems that Randy is to have one daughter, who of course is to be Stephanie, who I guess is living with some woman. We have at some points where Randy's to go on and say that this woman is probably in love with this other woman, but there's no real evidence of that. Like, we can say that this woman is to comfort Stephanie, but there is no like 100% relationship out of that. So Randy is to go on and is to seek out Stephanie, and it seems that every time he calls her, he just gets her messaging machine. So Randy goes to the building where she's at and is to go and find her and just be like, hey, like I just want some time to talk. And of course, Stephanie's saying, hey, I have school, I have other things to do. And Randy's going on and like, hey, I had a heart attack. Like, I just want to see you. Like, I just want to, like, I get that I haven't really been in your life in a long, long time. And Stephanie's like, well, you know what? Like, where were you when I needed you? Like, so, like, you had a heart attack, so what? Like, I don't care. Like, you're never really in my life, and so on and so forth. And so we have it where Randy is just kind of feeling defeated, but he then goes on and is to kind of tell Cassidy what had happened. And Cassie's going on of like, well, how about you try to go on and try to like win her over, like try to get her like some kind of like thrift store kind of clothes or something like that. Maybe you can just kind of find her like a common item thing that will maybe win her over. And so Randy's like, yeah, I don't know, I'm not quite sure. And Cassie's like, well, hey, how about I go on with you to this place and we can pick something out. And Randy's like, are you sure? And Cassidy's like, yeah, sure. Because Cassidy again is just realizing more and more like when she goes on to go to anybody else, nobody else is really interested, and so Cassidy is just forced to go right back to Randy and just talk to him more. So we have Cassidy who is to meet up with Randy, and we find out that Cassidy's real name is Pam, and that Pam has a kid, has a son. And so Randy goes on and is to pick out clothes with Cassidy, and she kind of picks her out like a common item, just like a pea coat. It's like, oh, okay, like, of course, a pea coat is to be kind of like those. Most of the time, you would see a lot of naval officers wearing a lot of pea coats, but I think it is a kind of a fairly common winter coat. Um, but I think you would traditionally, like, you might see a lot of naval or military guys just wearing a lot of pea coats, but I would commonly say naval officers, but anyways. So we go on and we have Cassidy who picks this coat, and Randy is to kind of pick up this other kind of coat that has an S on it, or looks just kind of like a sweater or something. Um, so Randy goes on and is to offer this gift to Stephanie, and really she likes the coat and she takes the coat. Randy was to say that the first gift was a joke, but here's the actual gift, which is a coat. And so Randy goes on and is to have Stephanie be won over by Randy to the point of them going on and spending some time together, just kind of going through some kind of flashbacks and having both Randy and Stephanie go through this place that used to be this kind of carnival or something like that, where Randy used to talk about all these um, rides that they went on or this haunted house and so on and so forth. And that they end up dancing at the end of this. We had it where both Randy and Pam or Cassidy also, after they were to go together and pick out this coat, we then go on and have Randy who's asking Cassidy, it's like, well, hey, like you look so great during the day. How about we just go on and like just have one beer together, just one beer, and then call it a day. So all of a sudden, Randy and Cassidy are at this bar, and so Randy is to kind of hear this song going on and being played, and so all of a sudden we have him like starting to like dance and all this stuff, and so we of course have Randy who's dancing for Cassidy, and she's like, like, I'm sure you're gonna get a job soon. And Randy's like, yeah, I need work. Like, so he's like dancing for Cassidy, I guess, like kind of the polar opposite, because normally Cassidy would be dancing for him. Um, and so they go on and they talk about how they have a love for 80s music and how 90s music just sucks. And then all of a sudden they kiss one another, and Cassidy's realized that was a mistake, so she just gulps down her entire beer and leaves. Um, Heineken, I guess, was a sponsor for this movie, right? Or was that just a coincidence? Because normally when you were seeing like an actual label being shown, like normally you would think it's some kind of sponsor, or it's just a coincidence. So we have Cassidy that leaves, and because we have Cassidy that's consistently fighting back and forth, where Cassidy is to say that Randy is still a customer to her, and Randy's like, but I think we have something here. And like Cassidy is consistently trying to fight it, and it seems that by the end of this movie, it seems like she kind of gives into that, but we're not really still sure by the end of this movie what exactly that means towards the end of this. So we go on and we have Randy who is asking Stephanie, hey, like on some day of the week, how about you and me? We go on and we just have dinner together. Wouldn't that be great? And Stephanie's like, oh, great. Like, yeah, how about Saturday? And Randy's like, sure, that sounds great. Because Randy is to be calling everybody and telling everyone that he's retiring. If anything, he's going to go to a wrestling show, but he's not actually going to work. And so Randy is to technically go backstage and is to start to go on and meet certain kind of guys. Like he ends up meeting R-Truth, of course. A lot of people know R-Truth as the a WWE wrestler who, of course, is to kind of be a very comedic wrestler, and I thoroughly enjoy his stuff. Um, so. So we go on and we have Randy who is to go on with R-Truth and with this other wrestler to go on to this bar and just kind of toss back a couple of beers. And we all of a sudden have Randy who's meeting some girl at this bar. And she's like, yeah, I know who you are. I know who your identity is. I'm like, what is he Superman? Like, so we go on and have this girl who is to go with Randy into this bathroom where they're gonna go and do some cocaine, some lines of cocaine, and then all of a sudden they end up just going at it into this bathroom. All of a sudden, one girl goes in the bathroom and realizes like, oh my god, get a room. So Randy and this girl are to be like Randy just wakes up in this room with a bunch of fireman posters, and I guess Randy had put on this outfit for this girl to make it seem like he is some fireman of sorts. So Randy realizes that he was ridiculously late for this get together with his daughter, and we have his daughter that's just so aggravated and just so upset with him that it's like, you know what, this is the last straw. She's tried too many times to cry over Randy that she's not going to do it anymore. Yada yada yada. Sadly enough, I'm just like the sad parts. I just want to kind of mow over and get through because there's so much to talk about here. Um, we also had Randy that was kind of mentioning before that he at some point tried as much as possible to forget about Stephanie. Um, and he felt bad about it afterwards, but like he always just tried to forget her, and that just started to, I guess, like weigh on him after a while. It's just like that he just wanted to treat her like she didn't exist, but now it feels like he wants her to exist, and he wants her to be in his life, and but we just turn around and have Stephanie who's like, you know what, like this is the last time. This is the last like attempt. Um, and when Randy is to kind of knock on the door, we have Stephanie's possible girlfriend going on of like, well, I guess he finally showed up. So, so Stephanie finally threw Randy out for good. So Randy is to go on and is to be kind of left to go into this deli, and he's not really going on and going to the club anymore because he just like he hasn't really built up to being able to take a lap dance from a woman right now. Of course, Cassidy, even though she offers, Randy's just like, I'm sorry, I just can't. I'm not health wise like in the best place to kind of go and have somebody just kind of dance on to me, and so on and so forth. Uh, so we go on, and we of course have Randy that is to be working at this deli, and we have it to where Randy's even asking for more shifts, even weekend shifts, and Wayne's like, "What? Did they jack up the price for tights? Like, what's going on here? Like, do you need another elbow pad? Do you need another knee pad? Like, what's going on here?" So Randy's just like, "No, I want to take on extra shifts." So we go on, and we of course have Randy that's just kind of feeling miserable, stuck in this deli, going on and having to consistently go on and find the perfect weight of certain meals for a certain character. Just growing more and more, just upset, more and more angry, and just wants to desperately get his aggressions out. To all of a sudden, we just find Randy, who is to go on and just try and cut himself within this one uh, device. So we go on and we have Randy who is to quit his job, and he's like running through these aisles and bashing through all this stuff, and he is to make his way out of there covered in blood, as he's just kind of tossing this blood all over his face, and he's just like, "Hey, you guys want another piece of chicken? Do you guys want another smoked ham? What do you guys want?" Just covered in blood. So we have Randy that quits this job, and so he goes on and he is talking to these wrestling promoters, and he's like, "You know what? I want to just wrestle. Just give me one match. Like, I just like just give me a match. I'm itching to just go and do this match." So they of course gave him a match with the Ayatollah, and uh, we go on and have this big match at Ring of Honor, and so on and so forth. And so Randy, of course, is do this match, and he's going on and telling Cassidy that he's going to wrestle again. And so Cassidy, instead of going on and doing her job for that night, she just forcibly walks out of her job and is going and finding out where Randy is, and is telling her, or Cassidy, when she finally meets up with Randy, is to go on and tell him, it's like, "Well, hey, I'm here for you, I'm here for you for real." And Randy's like, "Well, the only thing that I need right now is just that roar of that crowd." So Randy goes out there and he cuts a promo, or he cuts uh, a mic thing, where he goes on and he is talking to the crowd, and Randy's going on and saying here in a kind of very heartfelt speech, that we have Randy who's saying, it's like, "Well, hey, there's some times where I don't look as good as I used to, um, or certain things may have happened, yada yada yada." Randy goes on and is to eventually say that the only people that are going to tell him that he's going to stop wrestling are all these people. When they stop cheering for him is when he is to just hang up his boots, kind of thing. So I'm hugely paraphrasing here. So we had Randy before the match, who was talking with Ayatollah, and Randy is trying to see what they should do before the match. And the Ayatollah is like, "I don't care. You're a baby face. I'm a heel. We should know exactly what we're doing in the match." So, because really what happens is they just kind of call it during the match. So we go on and we have Randy who is fighting the Ayatollah, because the Ayatollah kind of hugs Randy and then kind of forearms him. So we start the match off. It seems that they're kind of doing some turnbuckle stuff, where we go on and we have Randy who's kind of being very aggressive. We of course have the Ayatollah that's kind of like smacking him with some hands, kind of like, "Hey, slow down." Um, we're having Randy doing all these kind of really cool moves. Uh, of course, some kind of Hurricane Rana kind of things, some kind of like him doing some really interesting leg work, and so on and so forth. So we, of course, have it where Randy is again he's kind of stumbling, and so we have the Ayatollah's like, "Well, hey, I'm going to take over here because it seems like you're kind of having some issues." So the Ayatollah like tries to keep the match going, and so Randy's just kind of having issues, and so Ayatollah's like, "Well, hey, like we've gone on and done enough. Like let's go home. Let's end this match." Um, because it seems like Randy's kind of stumbling. So all of a sudden Randy's like feeling good. He's going and kind of doing a drop kick of sorts, or kind of a kick of sorts. And then we have Randy going up to the top rope, of course, to reveal or do his kind of double elbow body splash move. The Ram Jam, I guess is what it's called in this film. So we of course have Randy, who is to pin for the 1, 2, 3, and of course Randy's to go on and win this match, leaving the Ayatollah to go back to his car dealership and be happy and satisfied with doing that. So really, we have it where Randy is kind of looking up at Cassidy to find her gone, and so Randy is just kind of going on and eventually, I'm assuming, going on and doing more and more wrestling, even though it may not be medically safe for him to do so. That's the thing that I kind of was to like immediately question within this movie. I'm like, what kind of wrestling promotion would kind of let their wrestlers wrestle unsafe? Like, isn't there kind of a medically clearing kind of thing, kind of approach for wrestling? Unless it's like backyard wrestling or something like that. But um, it's kind of weird to not have somebody like medically cleared for whatever reason. But anyways, I think that technically wraps up this movie. Um, really, I went on and kind of spit through a lot of the dialogue, just because I'm not a dialogue person, or a lot of the line deliveries and whatever, because I just kind of wanted to get through this as quickly as possible. But thank you for watching this review. Thank you for going on and listening to any parts of this review. I really enjoyed The Wrestler, and hopefully someone will go on and finally see this movie if they haven't, especially if they are wrestling fans, or maybe they just gone on and watched something somewhere and they just randomly stumbled upon this. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.